podcast from the grassroots, connecting people and sharing ideas. Hello and welcome back to Durian ASEAN. This is Gowri.
This is Arlene.
And we are moving on to our ABC focus for this morning.
Again, we are going to talk about ASEAN Summit, the 25th ASEAN Summit that were organized in Naypyidaw. Although last week we discussed a lot about the ASEAN Summit, but we will mainly giving a bit of a background introduction about what ASEAN Summit is all about. But this time, we will be focusing more on what exactly were being discussed at ASEAN Summit 2014.
And we are very excited that Malaysia is has finally taken over the chairmanship of ASEAN 2015.
Oh yeah, and a new logo as well,
which we have up on our Facebook page. If people want to have a look,
First
it's already there.
First of all, Gowri,
yes.
What do you think? Be frank.
I actually like it. It's very colorful and all the different colors actually represent different things. I thought it was very bright, very cheerful.
But we actually received some criticism about the logo. Some people think that it's a bit of odd. The whole shape looks like durian in a way. I mean, I feel very honored that they actually used that durian as a reference because, you know, we are durian ASEAN.
That actually did cross my mind. It looked more like a sun to me with all the shine at the corners of the rim.
So it's a sun with another 10 smaller suns.
Do you like it though?
I felt it was way too colorful. I prefer to keep it as simple as possible. I'm not a big fan of, you know, a rainbow of colors being put on the logo.
So you prefer the Myanmar one with all the flowers around it, which was much simpler.
I saw the flower. It's actually quite nice. I mean, I prefer the Myanmar one. They have good taste.
So we were there last Wednesday at the ASEAN Business Advisory Council, BAC as we're going to call it, when they organized the 2015 chairmanship handover dinner. And of course, our Prime Minister was there, and he took over from U Win Aung, who was the outgoing chair of the ASEAN BAC Myanmar, which was a very important, very significant event that took place.
It was a very significant event. A lot of who's who within the government ministry, not necessarily government ministry, but secretary generals and business councils within the government ministry were there. For example, I personally saw faces like Zeti Aziz from the Bank Negara, and then Stam Maria from the Secretary General of MITI, and a few other Secretary Generals representative from different ministries. There were also business council from that represents different region of trying to connect Malaysia with other countries, and they were also surprisingly Tony Fernandes.
Tony Fernandes was there. And he's actually a very witty, very sarcastic guy who is straight to the point. He's not afraid of anything or anyone.
One significant progress of the ASEAN 2015 we will foresee is the opening up of the aviation sector. Of course, as we all know, you don't need a visa to go to any of the countries in Southeast Asia, except of course for Myanmar. And for Malaysians, we will also enjoy benefits. This is one interesting benefit, which is ASEAN Pass. And it's opening up to other Southeast Asian nations as well.
Yes, actually all the 10 ASEAN countries will have access to this ASEAN Pass, where they can travel to 10 countries at a flat rate. And this is a very...
there are two rates involved.
There are two rates, 499 and 899, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Is so Tony Fernandes.
But it was something that was quite impromptu. I think he didn't have much information available as well, but it's a sure thing. It's definitely going on sale in January. So those of you who want to go backpacking to all 10 countries, this will be the perfect time for them.
Besides that, there were recommendations by ASEAN BAC, Business Advisory Council, to provide a ASEAN business pass, meaning that if you want to do business in Vietnam or if you want to do business in Indonesia, you do not have to worry as much about your mobility when it comes to taking a flight. You with that pass, it's similar to the ASEAN pass. You can go from one country to another country, I guess either with a flat rate or with a full pass, like what you see usually the train rides among EU people.
And Tan Sri Munir Majid also promised, like you mentioned, that Malaysia will go ahead and come up with the business travel card. And he said it doesn't matter if other countries are going to do it, Malaysia will be the first to actually implement it. And this is, and he was also going to find partners with other ASEAN countries rather than doing it alone, because that makes it easier, and also it provides a wider outreach to all the ASEAN countries.
Another interesting development on the ASEAN summit is the focus on SMEs. Many times when we talk about economic liberalization, the main benefactor, I would say, entities would be the MNC. And of course, you all know MNC are very strong financially in terms of structure. But for SMEs, they're actually quite vulnerable. For you to liberalize the economy, you are actually risking having SMEs to compete with bigger and stronger companies. So with the kind of ASEAN economic community that ASEAN leaders are seeking for is to ensure that SMEs are the ones that are being given priority.
And there were actually two different discussions on SMEs where they talked about all the challenges that the SMEs were facing, and then they were also trying to come up with solutions through the dialogue with some of the distinguished guests that they invited. And like you mentioned, the SMEs do actually play a very important part in moving ASEAN 2015, and also in terms of AEC. And they also discussed the relationship between the SMEs and the MNCs, how they can actually help each other, what they can do for one another, so they can move forward together. And it's not only the MNC that is moving forward and is making more money. And it seems that most of the SMEs are, of course, still not aware of what ASEAN can do for them, what are the benefits, which was addressed by our Minister of International Trade and Industry, Dato Mustafa Muhammad. And he said that his department is going to focus more on the SMEs, trying to provide them with the right awareness and the education as well, so they know how to actually get into this whole ASEAN AEC bandwagon and make it work for them in a profitable way.
Looking back at the ASEAN 2014, prior to the ASEAN 2015 handover of chairmanship, it seems like when it comes to the team, they want to focus more on moving forward in unity to a peaceful and prosperous community. But in reality, do you think it achieved its major theme?
Well, it's a very complicated question, I think, because all the different countries, we have different standings in the entire region. Even for 2015, we're not actually sure if that whole integration can happen. And I think even our Prime Minister mentioned in his speech that this is definitely going to be a difficult process, but it's a necessary one. And it's not quite a destination, it's more about the process, and to kind of get all the countries together to come up with a one unified integrated system will of course be very tricky. So as for now, I definitely don't think that we're there yet, but maybe in 2015 we will be a bit more integrated than we were before, and especially in terms of economy, because there's a lot of efforts being made.
There were many priorities that were being set up when it comes to the master plan of ASEAN. There were the master plan of connectivity, of businesses, and so on and so forth. But in reality, when it comes to pressing issues such as human rights, ASEAN is still way back behind, lagging behind. And that is where majority of people are criticizing ASEAN. ASEAN is a very hopeful region. A lot of countries, China, US, EU, and even India, they are looking at ASEAN as the future of the emerging markets. And for investors, this is where they need to be at. And we see during the ASEAN Summit 2014, many countries were looking forward to partner with ASEAN countries, with AEC as a whole, in order for them to ensure that they will be able to get more FDI for ASEAN, and also there will be more trade happening around in this region. Especially, majority of the ASEAN nation are having a bit of economic slowdown in recent years.
And also, they were actually looking at three or four different areas when it comes to this ASEAN integration, which is, of course, like you mentioned, human rights, and there's political, there's economic security, and also social cultural. And this, they are also looking to come up with this ASEAN blueprint where we'll have 2.4 trillion worth in economy, and we are also striving to be one of the largest economic power in the world, as number 4th once we come together. And apart from that, they also, of course, there was a lot of pressure, if I may, on the SMEs, and that was also being mentioned by YB Datuk Sri Mustafa, who is our international trade and industry minister. And it seems that he focused a lot more on implementation. He was saying that all this while we keep talking about blueprint and planning and signing this agreement and that, but right now it's time for us to actually act upon the implementation, and there's no more planning, no more coming up with frameworks and blueprint. It's time to actually go ahead and do it.
Actually, we are not really sure what is Malaysia's priority for the next ASEAN Chairmanship, do we?
Well, we do have the Prime Minister's speech with us.
Before you mention the Prime Minister's speech, I just want to mention what was Myanmar's priority when it assumed the role of ASEAN chairman. It is supposed to ensure that the full implementation of the remaining tasks in realizing the ASEAN community by 2015, which I believe may not actually be realized, because even for Malaysia, if I'm not mistaken, we only managed to fulfill around 70% of the ASEAN community ASEAN community requirements. And secondly, to set the priority areas for acceleration in implementation of the ASEAN community, to review the status of community building, to set future initiative to vitalize ASEAN, to formulate programs in promoting ASEAN external relations. That's very vague. And a lot of things to do as well. And besides, they also need to carry out the review of ASEAN Charter to maintain the relevance of ASEAN in changing circumstances. That is also questionable. A lot of people were criticizing the ASEAN Charter for withholding the progress of ASEAN in terms of addressing key human rights issue. And of course, when I say key human rights issue, one of it would be the issue of the Rohingya, the Papua, and the issue of refugee and immigrants in Malaysia that is still unresolved. Yesterday I was watching a documentary by Al Jazeera. It's called Unwanted something I can't remember now. Something unwanted. But it's about how immigrants and refugees in Malaysia were being treated as less than human in Malaysia, unfortunately, being a first world, supposed to be being the more progressive nation in Southeast Asia. And lastly, the goal of Myanmar is to transform ASEAN as a people-centered organization. That is also questionable, because one of the goal of being a people-centered organization is to accelerate participation of women, youth, parliamentarians, and media in the activities of ASEAN. Do you think it has achieved that, Gowri?
in terms of Myanmar, I definitely do not think that they have achieved it. Even today, as we were reported this morning, that President Thein Sein actually denied that the Rohingyas are going through a tough time. He said this was all a media fabrication, which we of course know is not true because
It's
we
totally
have
in your face.
we have Rohingya refugees in Malaysia, so why are they here then? If everything is all well and fine in your country, so to go that far to say that this is all a media fabrication and this is not really happening, or they're not being subject to violence, they're not being tortured, is definitely quite a blatant lie that we can see through.
To be very frank with you, at least if you want to lie, make sure
Make it believable.
Yeah, make it believable. It's not that we are criticizing you, but yeah.
So in that sense, I think
horrible
Myanmar
liars.
still has a lot of work to do, and we know that they have their elections next year. They're trying to go for a reform, and there will be no reform if you try to cover up what's really happening instead of really addressing the problem.
Yeah. I just want to highlight what the title of the documentary in Al Jazeera is called Malaysia's Unwanted. I recommend everyone to watch it. The reason why I want to highlight the issue of immigrants and refugees, with ASEAN Economic Community, you know, you have the ASEAN Pass, you have the trade liberalization, the leave of tariff and other taxation, and of course you want to encourage more SMEs, more local business participation in the larger community. But at the same time, you need to address key structural issues when it comes to business, and also when it comes to human mobility. So you need to address issues on immigrations, on immigrants, on, of course, the most pressing one is refugees. Apparently, Malaysia has the largest urban refugees in the world.
And they are, of course, not being given their rights as well. We have a reputation, unfortunately, for overworking them, for not even providing them with basic rights like home, electricity, water, and they live in such terrible conditions. They might as well just stay in their country because they are here to seek for a better life.
And we need to address the issue of salary structure and other employment issues that is related to ASEAN Economic Community if the government is serious in implementing it. For example, I just give one example. Do you know that Alam Flora workers only earn 900 ringgit and they are Malaysians?
I'm not surprised. We do not actually have a very a strict or a solid framework when it comes to salary, because you can be earning and of course we do have a minimum wage after a quite long process of lobbying for it, but even then, if you look at it, 900 is not something that is not even logical in that sense to survive in Malaysia. Unless you're in some rural area not close by the city, then probably it's enough to survive, but not if you're in KL, not even if you're in Penang.
Alam Flora, just to give a bit of introduction about the Alam Flora, what is it all about? They are our garbage collectors. They are the ones that, you know, sting themselves in order to ensure that our housing areas are clean.
And let's move on to our Prime Minister's speech.
Oh, yeah, you haven't mentioned it yet.
Yes, so of course the speech is very long and we cannot cover every part of it. But some of the things he mentioned is the national SME policies, that they are going to have a structural change and it will support the overall regional policy. And he also talked a lot about what ASEAN BAG is doing.
ASEAN Business Advisory Council.
For this, and he's also mentioned about the AEC. And just like Myanmar, he also said that this is going to be a people-centered ASEAN, as all the leaders have decided that this will be people-centric. It will focus on...
Actually, people were questioning that particular sentence, as decided by the ASEAN leaders. So what do you mean by that? Are you saying that the limitation of people-centered ASEAN is based on the decision of a few leaders on top?
Well, for me, the way I see it, it seems that they've all come together as leaders and decided that, okay, this year's ASEAN is going to be a people-centered one. And apart from that, he also talked about some of the challenges that we'll be facing as Malaysians, of course, because this is something that's very new, something that we're not used to, and I probably don't even have to mention it. If you go out there and you ask people about ASEAN, I'm sure a lot of people will be like, huh, what?
Go and ask your brother and sister.
And so because of that, he also addressed a lot of challenges. And one of the key area that was highlighted during the 2 day, especially the conference on the second day, was actually the use of technology. This was brought up by the CEO of Telecom who was there, if I'm not wrong. There was definitely someone from Telecom, but I can't remember his designation. And he said technology is actually the fastest, the most reliable way for SMEs to actually expand and to reach out.
They do want to ensure that there will be better IT connectivity.
Yes, that was one of the
that,
key
that is
policy.
that is really important. In fact, Southeast Asia has one of the worst in terms of IT connectivity. Tell me about it when it comes to internet access. Slow, Milo.
We have, I think we are one of the slowest in this region. Yes, our internet is quite slow, and they're probably going to work on that as well. They will increase the speed also to provide education, because a lot of these SMEs, they do not know how to set up a proper website, how to promote their business online, when that is actually the most efficient way for them to get out there. And once you're on the internet, the whole world knows your market and who you are. Even if you're just selling nasi lemak.
Just to put things in perspective, how can you expect the lady selling nasi lemak on the street side to be all literate in IT stuff?
You know what?
Impossible.
You can ask that to Tan Sri Munir. But yeah, another area that he said before he concluded the press conference was also in terms of young entrepreneurs. He said that there's also another untapped market that we have in Malaysia, also in ASEAN, because a lot of us have this mindset where we just go to college and then you get a job and then you go to do it the conventional way. But what we need are more entrepreneurs. We want people to think, to be innovative, to come up with new products, to be more creative. And that's what will really drive us as a nation or as the entire bloc.
Mm-hmm. We can go as long as we can, but I just want to highlight one key area. Khazanah Research Institute has done a really interesting research on socio-economic development in Malaysia. And when it comes to innovation, it does address why innovation in Malaysia has lagged behind. And of course, one of it is the opportunity is not there. But the second reason is because of the structural problem in this country, which is not encouraging people to open up. So Gowri, elaborate.
Right. And also we can of course we will be interviewing Tuan Syed Nabil, who will be touching on the young entrepreneurs and what are their plans in order to reach out to these young people, because they are ultimately the future of the country and the future of ASEAN. So that's all the time that we have today. We kind of went a little overboard because we're so excited about
We are
ASEAN.
so excited. Also a bit of cynism also.
That's true. So if you want to learn more about ASEAN, you can just drop us a message on Facebook. Tell us which areas you want us to discuss about, and we can probably focus on that even more.
Engage with us on Facebook and Twitter.
And subscribe to our YouTube channel.
We will have an Instagram in the
Soon.
future. Soon. Very, very soon.
So we'll see you in a bit for our ABC dialogue for this morning.